Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2010 action film, The Expendables. Now, this is a film that, when it was announced, I was super pumped for this movie. I wasn't the only one. As a fan of old school, over the top 80s action movies, this was a dream come true. To have Stallone, Lundgren, Jet Li, Jason Statham, all in one movie, plus cameo performances by actors like Bruce Willis and Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was everything that an action fan uh, really could have dreamed of for the most part. I mean, in retrospect, there are some things that I wish were handled a little differently in terms of the casting, but man, was it a good time to be a fan of 80s old school action, because it was as if my fandom of that kind of action movie was being rewarded in an epic, badass fashion. And saw it in the theater. I had a blast. And I will say this, I don't love the film like I initially did when I saw it in the theater. When the epicness of having these actors together on one screen wore off, and I focused more on the directing and the questionable editing and some of the weaker aspects of the story and some of the pacing problems. It wasn't nearly as astonishing or as amazing as I initially thought it was, but it's still a really entertaining, enjoyable, fun action movie that more than delivers the goods, especially when it comes to its climax. The climax is like 30 minutes or maybe even more of that, of nonstop action, with explosions, gunplay, knife play, hand-to-hand combat, everything under the action movie sun. Now, the film was directed by Sylvester Stallone, and I honestly feel this is one of his weakest efforts when it comes to his directing. I don't think it was terrible, but it was surprisingly average. Stallone has shown that he can be a very capable director. He's directed a lot of films. For instance, you've got Rambo 4. He directed Rocky Balboa. He also directed other Rocky sequels. He also directed Staying Alive. But I would actually even say Staying Alive is a better directed movie than this. Because for some reason, Stallone became infatuated with shaky cam and quick cuts, and on top of that, extreme close ups straight out of Wayne's World. I don't understand the obsession with the extreme close ups. There are a lot of scenes in this that are honestly hampered quite a bit by this need to have as many extreme close-ups of people's faces while they're talking as humanly possible. I don't understand why Stallone wanted to do that. It doesn't add anything to these scenes. For instance, when Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Stallone, their characters meet up in the church and they discuss their plans, there's too many scenes that are just extreme close-ups of people's faces talking, when it would have been even more cool, it would have been even more badass if there was more of a variety of the shots. Uh, the sequence with Mickey Rourke's character when he's talking about his past. It's a really great performance by Mickey Rourke. It's a well written bit of dialogue and a good monologue, but it's not as strong as it could be in terms of its impact, because so much of it is just this super extreme close up on Mickey Rourke's face. So Not only that, in a lot of the action sequences, like I said, there's just too much shaky cam, and that doesn't really add to the sequences. To me, it actually detracts from them. And the moments when the action is showcased that features camera work that is more stable are really the highlights of the film when it comes to its action. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of Stallone's directing. I actually think uh, his directing here really is a big reason why the film isn't great in retrospect. Uh, the screenplay by David Callahan and Sylvester Stallone, I know it's gotten a lot of criticism for how weak the plot is, and on one hand, I can get it. I mean, General Garza is a very forgettable, bland villain. Would have liked to have seen more screen time for Eric Roberts because he's a much more memorable antagonist. Uh, and the whole thing about them going to this other country, this fictional country, to try to overthrow some dictator, that's the kind of thing that's been done a million times over. So I can see why some people are a little less than impressed with the film's screenplay. But with this kind of movie, really what you are wanting out of it is the action. And when there is action on the screen and it's shot well and it's not nearly ruined by questionable directing and editing, it's a thrill ride. It's the kind of action that'll blow you out of the back wall of the theater, whether you are seeing it in the theater or at your home theater. Uh, Big fun with big guns and tons of testosterone. And speaking of the testosterone, there's a certain genuine charm when it comes to the banter, when it comes to the back and forth with these characters, especially Stallone and Jason Statham. I thought those two worked brilliantly together, and I really felt that those two characters had a lot of lines of dialogue where they could riff on one another that was quite memorable and quite endearing. So well, yes, the screenplay is kind of a mixed bag in terms of the overall plot. A lot of ways, the plot itself is just a setup for the over the top action, and it delivers when it comes to that aspect. And the characters are likable enough. I really think that this is a lovable band of mercenaries that's right up there with a lot of other ensemble action casts. And you also have moments where they are a little more serious, like the bit of dialogue I was mentioning with Mickey Rourke, his monologue where he's talking about the moment where he could have stopped someone from committing suicide, but he didn't, and that's why the last part of him that was human died, or his soul. That's the moment when his soul died. Um, I, I I liked that. I thought it was a really poignant and haunting sequence, and it really was a great monologue. And it never really took itself too seriously, despite moments like that. It definitely has its tongue planted firmly in its left cheek in terms of how crazy things get, how unrealistic it is. And that was to the film's benefit. Like, if you're going to do this kind of movie, it shouldn't be grounded in reality. It should be a straight up action fantasy. And there's some fun concepts like Fry and Die. I love that. Where they are in their big plane and they dump gas and then they gun down a bunch of people with guns and then throw a flare and just blow everyone sky high. The variety of different fights and different weapons that they use in the climax. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, you've got Jet Li with his hand-to-hand combat, with his martial arts. You've got Randy Couture with his UFC moves. You've got Dolph Lundgren with knives and with a bunch of other stuff. Well, Dolph Lundgren, he was more doing bigger action stuff early on in the movie, because then they did this whole thing with the script where he was unreliable and he was mentally unstable, and then he was working for the bad guys, and then he fights Jet Li, and it was a lot of fun to see Lundgren fight Jet Li. But to be honest, I would have preferred Lundgren's character to not have this ultimately pointless turn, especially when you look at what his character would be relegated to do in the sequels. So when you look at what he's doing in the sequels, you wish he did more throughout the entire movie. You wish he was there with Stallone and Statham and Terry Crews and Randy Couture and Jet Li in the climax, um, instead of just a little bit near the end. Now, all of that being said, the climax, like I was talking about, it's just fast, furious, and fun. You got martial arts, you've got different kinds of gunplay, you've got Terry Crews with his massive fucking shotgun that just turns people into fucking hamburger. You've got Stallone with six shooters and bigger guns. He gets into a fight with Steve Austin. You've got Gary Daniels. He's one of the bad guys, and he gets double teamed, I think, by Stallone and Statham. And I don't know if Jet Li was also in that scene or not. I completely. I think it was just Stallone and Statham, or it might have been Lee and Statham. But yeah, he gets double teamed and gets his neck broken in a crowd pleasing fashion. Uh, and there's all kinds of crazy explosions, and it's just a tour de force of just terrific fucking action. Like, I gotta be honest, like, the film itself as a whole is kind of there up until that point, but when you get to that climactic, over the top, insane action sequence that's long and lavish in terms of its production values, and just absolutely fucking amazing in terms of the adrenaline rush that it provides you. That's what makes the film for me, is that last half of the movie, the last 30 minutes or so. But even that has some issues. Like, I don't like the CGI that they use, because a lot of the times it looks very cheap. Like, there's a couple explosions that look really bad, and then there's one in particular in terms of a sequence that's very ineffective and honestly pretty laughable. And it's the last scene you see with Steve Austin's character, where he gets his ass kicked by Randy Couture, and he gets thrown into the fire. And the CGI of his character on fire is atrocious. It's just ridiculously poor. And speaking of Stone Cold Steve Austin, I do agree with other critics who have said that it honestly would have been a better idea for Stallone to have switched the casting, to have Randy Couture play his role and have Stone Cold play Randy Couture's character as a member of the Expendables. Because I'm a big fan of Randy Couture because of his UFC work, but he's not a good actor. He has no real charisma, personality, and Stone Cold is much better in that regard. And I think that would have been a better decision in terms of the casting. And another thing about the film that just doesn't really do much for me is the whole thing with Sandra. This is a character that she's meant to be, this character that's representing the revolution in this fictional country, or part of the world, and I get why she's there. and she's supposed to be hope, and she's supposed to represent a reason for the Expendables to actually uh, showcase that they still have a soul, but the character just was pretty mediocre. Wasn't really that invested in her, and the performance wasn't that great either. So I don't think that really helped. But overall, it's just It's just that whole thing is just, it's just there. Like I don't hate it. It's just there for me. Uh, when it comes to the performances, I mean, for what they're asked to do, most of this cast really excels. I mean, Stallone is Barney Ross. This honestly might be his last great action movie performance is as Barney Ross in this film because he's energetic throughout. He's having the time of his life, hanging out with close friends and playing action star with a massive budget. And Jason Statham, he's also getting to live a dream working with Stallone, and the two just have this great working relationship. Dolph Lundgren, he also was having a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed his character. That's why I wish there was more of Gunner, because I really liked the scenes that he was in. Jet Li, uh, he was also having fun, and he worked well with the cast. Eric Roberts was a good scumbag. He plays great scumbags. That being said, it would have been nice to have seen Pacino or De Niro because they were originally considered, but Eric Roberts was eventually cast. Ray Liotta was another name that was mentioned, and he probably would have been really good as well. But can you imagine Al Pacino? That could have been really cool. Like Stallone going up against Pacino. Um Other bigger named action stars, they were asked to be a part of the film, but just didn't work out. Like Jean-Claude Van Damme was offered a role, but he declined because he said the role doesn't have a lot of substance. Um, and at the premiere of the film, apparently Stallone says he was speaking to Van Damme over the phone. And he says, "I told you so." To which Van Damme concurred and expressed his regret for not participating in the film. Hail Caesar, the role that went to Terry Crews, it was initially intended for Wesley Snipes, but because of his issues with taxes, because he's a fucking dumbass, he wasn't able to be in the movie. So they decided to give it to Forrest Whitaker, and they rewrote some things for his character, but then he couldn't do it. So then he was replaced by 50 Cent of all people. Yeah, the Expendables almost had 50 fucking Cent in the role that Terry Crews played. And thankfully, that didn't work out, and Terry Crews was cast as Hail Caesar. And I thought Terry Crews did a good job. I wish Wesley Snipes was in this, but Terry Crews still did a good job. He fit the crew well. Steven Seagal, he was asked to make a cameo role, but he declined because of a negative experience with the producer Avi Lerner, which I find hilarious because it seems like Seagal is a total uh, asshole to pretty much everybody. So it's funny that he has lines that he doesn't want to cross. It's really funny that he has those kind of standards where he's like, "Oh, I don't want to work with him because he's a piece of shit." It's like a piece of shit calling someone else a piece of shit over here. Like, come on, man. So, yeah, for the most part, solid cast. I'm not gonna say much about David Zayas because the guy just really there was nothing to that role. Same thing for Gisele Itié or Charisma Carpenter. Gary Daniels, he played a good bad guy, good heavy. Mickey Rourke did the role as a favor to Stallone for giving him a role while he was not doing very well in his life and with his career. And Get Carter. Um, and he did a really solid job as Tool. Steve Austin, intimidating, badass. Wish that he was a part of the Expendables though, instead of a part of Eric Roberts' team. And the sequence where you got to see the three big stars, Willis, Schwarzenegger, and Stallone, in one room, it was something that was straight out of my dreams. And the fact that they were all ribbing one another and having in jokes, and Bruce Willis is talking about, not going to start sucking each other's dicks. It was really fun, and I wish there was more of that, but what we had was still something for the ages. And it was just nice to see those three together. And it's just one of those movies where, yeah, it's an ensemble film, so you don't really have as much screen time for everyone as you might have with a different kind of film. But what you have works because everyone in the cast pretty much has equal chemistry, except for maybe Randy Couture. I don't really think he blended that well with the cast. And Jet Li had some moments too, because a lot of his thing was just, I need the money, and that was really kind of about it. But when it comes to like Lundgren, Statham, Stallone, I felt that those members of the team, they really had great chemistry with one another. The music by Brian Tyler, I thought it was really good. I thought Brian Tyler did a terrific job with the score, especially when it comes to the more action-packed sequences in the movie, and featured some nice cinematography at times by Jeffrey Kimball, but at other times it looked a little cheap. Got to be honest. The editing by Ken Blackwell and Paul Harb, it's hit and miss. Like, there are moments where it's on target, but then there's moments where it's a little too off kilter. It's a little too inconsistent. And for the most part, went by at a really good pace. It's 103 minutes, but there are some moments where it kind of slows down a little bit when it's trying to develop the whole plot that's involving the uh, the island in the Gulf of Mexico of Elena, which I don't know if that's fictional or not. If it isn't, I apologize belatedly. But for the most part, usually in these kind of movies, it's just a lot of it's fictional countries or fictional islands or whatever. Um, but yeah, when it's establishing that part, it's a little slow, to be honest. You have the fry and die scene. You have some little bits of some shootouts here and there, but nothing really that extensive. Um, the opening, it was fun. Although there were some moments too in that where, going back to some of the issues I have with Stallone's directing, there are some shots that are just random. Like, all of a sudden, in the opening sequence, it will randomly cut to the POV of somebody looking through heat vision goggles, or it's like the reflection of somebody getting killed in the goggles or something. And it's an interesting shot, but it's so jarring and out of place that it just feels like it was thrown in there because Stallone thought it looked cool. And it didn't seem like it actually had a place in the scene other than that. So there are a fair amount of moments like that in the movie where you will have sequences that are edited in there, or shots that you're like, oh, all right, but that doesn't really work here. So it's a little disappointing in that regard, in terms of how inconsistent and how uneven the directing is at times. But it's not uneven at all when it comes to the action. When the action is delivering what it's promising you, it is absolutely amazing. It's exciting, it's thrilling, and it's everything that you want it to be. And that's why I would say the film is a little underrated, because yes, it's got its issues, but man, when it decides to lock and load, it's something special. Now, I'm actually gonna leave you with this quote from Dolph Lundgren. which I feel perfectly sums up this movie. This is Dolph describing the Expendables. It's an old school kick-ass action movie where people are fighting with knives and shooting at each other. Could not have put it better myself. Anyway, thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you later.